All right, let's look at the first 13 questions of the review that is posted under the weekly agenda. This should be similar to what you're going to see for your actual test. So we'll go through this. I'll try to go slowly. If there's anything you don't understand, reach out to either one of us, but I'm Professor Wiederhold. You can reach out to me through email or Remind, found under the faculty profile. So, number 1. Round to the thousandths place. If it ends in that THS, then it's after the decimal. Our first place after the decimal is the 10th, and then the 100th, and then this right here is the 1000th. So we want to stop at that spot. And we look to the number to the right. And we see that it is a 6. If it's 5 or greater, then we round up. So to the third spot after the decimal, we have 8.538. Moving on. Number 2. Multiply the fractions and simplify to lowest terms. Write the answer as an improper fraction when necessary. So we don't need to turn it into a mixed number. I don't know if that's something you've even encountered. But I'm going to show you how to use the calculator on the questions I would assume that you would use a calculator on. So I like to put my fractions in parentheses. So that is negative 7/5 times. And again, I'm using the negative button, not the minus button. We're not subtracting, we are multiplying a negative. So this button right here. For negative 7/2, and so, again, if you're not sure, we're just using the division symbol. So negative 7/5 times negative 7/2. Anytime I open a parenthesis, I need to close it. And we get 4.9. To turn that into a fraction, we'll use this feature a few times on the review. This math button right here, underneath alpha. Math. Fraction is already highlighted. That's what we want. So we hit enter and enter again. So math, enter, enter, will reduce what you have to its simplest fraction. In this case, 49/10. You definitely want to have a calculator, specifically like a TI-84 Plus or a TI-83 like this will do. You want to have a calculator. But what's happening here is a negative times a negative is positive. 7 times 7 across the top is 49. 5 times 2 across the bottom is 10. When we multiply fractions, we go top times the top and bottom times the bottom. Number 3, we are adding and subtracting fractions. In this class, we're only going to look at these fractions that have the same denominator. And so here, the denominator stays the same, and we just add or subtract the numerators. So 40 minus 15 is 25, plus 7 is 32. So again, that was just 40 minus 15 plus 7, all happening in the numerator, over 11. You could use the calculator here if you wanted to, but it's just adding. It's pretty straightforward. If you do use the calculator, you would get a decimal, and you would need to hit math, enter, enter, to get this fraction. So let's turn the page. Convert 5,768,779 inches to miles using dimensional analysis, which is also called the unit conversion. Round to 2 decimal places if necessary. Again, you're going to want to, well, you have to submit your work when you take an online test. We will give partial credit based on the work, but Alex will say that the answer is wrong if your decimal is wrong, so you need to be careful with your rounding. So, dimensional analysis. I'm going to start with 5,768,779 inches. And I put my starting unit over 1 because we use the property of multiplying fractions to get this down to the dimensions that we want. So here, let me start over. I'm going to run out of room. So 5 million inches over 1. So what can we convert this to? We can't go straight from inches to miles, but we can go from inches to feet. And again, if I have inches on bottom and top of the fractions, then they will cancel out. I know that in 1 foot, there are 12 inches. So we're working our way from inches to feet to miles. You might want to print out, I can't remember if it is on the question, but this should be in your notes somewhere, some conversions. This is the one I always have to look up. How many feet are in a mile? There are 5,280 feet. And again, I want feet to cancel out, leaving me with my desired unit of miles. For every 1 mile, there are 5,280 feet. And again, feet on top and bottom cancel out. So we're converting from inches, then to feet, then to miles. And so what do we have looking at our numbers? I have this 5 million, etc., times 1 across the top. So that's that in the numerator. In the denominator, we have 12 times 5,280, which is 63,360. Again, multiplying fractions, we go top times the top, bottom times the bottom. So this 5 million times 1 times 1, 1 times 12 times 5,280 is 63,360. And so, finally, this is what we need to divide. Divided by 63,360. To the second decimal place. Get out of that glare. We look to the right. A 7 is 5 or above, so it bumps this number up to 91.05 miles. Maybe you can kind of work these out without having to write everything out. Maybe you can see that it's this number right here divided by 12 divided by 5,280. And if so, that's great. But this is how Alex shows us how to do dimensional analysis. Zoom back in. For number 5, it says first, simplify each side of the equation and then solve the equation. Of course, our answer is just going to be what is h, so that is good advice to start by simplifying each side of the equation. 9h minus 8h. Those are like terms. They both have an h in them. 9 minus 8 is 1. So there's an implied invisible coefficient of 1 in front of that h. Bring in everything else. The plus 7 in the equals 2. Now we want to get h completely by itself. To get rid of a plus 7, we subtract 7. Anything I do to one side of the equal sign, I have to do to the other. 7 minus 7 cancels out, and 2 minus 7 is negative 5. Number 6. Solve the equation. Write your answer as an integer or simplified fraction. Again, integer is a whole number. You might get a fraction here. If I look at the left side of the equal sign, I see 8b plus 2b. We can combine that, I'll go over here, and do 10b. And then I bring in the minus 30 equals. On the right side of the equal sign, I have like terms of 8 and 4. I cannot combine this 4b because there is not another term on the right side of the equal sign that has a b in it. But two numbers, what we call constants, those we can combine. 8 plus 4 makes 12. Bring in the 4b and attach the b that I forgot over here. Again, 8b plus 2b is 10b. We brought in the minus 30. We haven't done anything to that yet. Equals 8 plus 4 is 12. Bring in the plus 4b. A lot of times students will miss these like terms if they're not next to each other, but just look and see what you have. From here, there are a few different things we can do, but most students like to see the variables on the left. So we want to get all of our variable terms on one side. 10b minus 4b is 6b. Try to make those look different. Bring in the minus 30 equals 12. So I have isolated, well, I've got all of the variables on one side, 6b. To get rid of a minus 30, we add 30. That cancels out. Now we have 6b equals 42. And now, you don't want to do this until the last step as you're solving an equation. Divide out that coefficient as your last step. You don't want to try to divide it out in the previous step. Divide it out here. If I divide one side by 6, I divide the other side by 6. 42 divided by 6 is 7. So there's our answer for number 7. We will solve this proportion. This is where we get to use what's known as the butterfly method. A proportion is where we have two ratios, two numbers being divided, set equal to each other. And so here we can use cross products, sometimes called the butterfly method. 54 times x is 54x. We can also do 9 times 18, which is 162. So we set the cross products equal to each other. Do our butterfly method. 54 times x is 54x. Set that equal to 9 times 18. And now we can divide out our coefficient. Divide both sides by 54. Cancels out on the left. 162 divided by 54 is 3. And real quick, to check your work on this, it has an equal sign. So both sides need to be equal. You can verify this in your calculator. We just solved that x is equal to 3. So when I divide 54 by 9, I get 6, which is exactly what I get when I do 18 divided by 3. So the left side equals the right side. Let's look at number 8. Find the sales tax and total cost of a Sony PlayStation that cost, well, isn't that nice, $156.99. The tax rate is 5%. Anytime we're talking about money, you want to round to the nearest cent, which is the second spot after the decimal. So when we are converting, well, when we're solving a problem with a tax rate, we need to convert 5% into a decimal. So 5% is 5, meaning the decimal is right here. We move the decimal to the left twice. So 5% is 0.05. So, think 5% of a dollar is a nickel, 0.05. So to find out the tax, we take the cost of the PlayStation multiplied to the tax rate as a decimal. You would put that in the calculator and get 7.85. Oh, it's on the back of this here. So turn the page. So the sales tax is 7.85. And the total cost, we take the cost of the PlayStation and add to that what you would pay in tax. So be careful, because Alex will mark the problem wrong if you give the tax when it's asking for the total cost or vice versa. So usually these two-part questions will kind of prevent you from doing that, but total cost is cost of the item plus tax. So 156.99 plus 7.85 is 164.84. Moving on. Write the percent equation in terms of x, then solve for the unknown percent. Round to the nearest tenth of a percent if necessary. So tenth is one spot after the decimal. So 525 is what percent of 1,750? This is our percent equation. Well, I'll put it here. We don't know what the percent is yet, so that is an unknown quantity of x. But when we kind of create an equation from a sentence, 525 is, whenever you see is, that's your equal sign. So 525 is, 525 equals, and then what percent of 750? The percent equation is to take just put in x, because it tells you in terms of x. Put in x attached to 1750, set it equal to 525. So if we solve this out, if we solve this like an equation, to solve for x, I would divide both sides by 1750. We would get x equals 0.3. But remember, it's asking for the percentage. So what is 0.3 as a percentage? To go from the decimal to the percent, we move to the right 2 spots. So 525 is 30% of 1,750. Let me know if you have any questions on that one. And we'll move on. Number 10. Charlene invested $7,000 at 4% simple interest. It will tell you in the problem which formula to use. Simple interest is I for interest equals the principal times the rate times time in years. T is always in years. Principal is, the initial amount that you're investing. Rate needs to be a decimal for rate. And time, again, is in years. So, Charlene invested $7,000 at 4% simple interest for 8 years. How much interest will she earn in 8 years? And then what will the total value of the account be after 8 years? So we're going to solve for I right here. And then I think there's a formula called amount equals principal plus interest. A equals P plus I. Total amount or total value is A for amount. And the total value will be what we invested plus the interest that it grew. So I equals our principal investment of 7,000 times 4%, which is 0.04. Remember, take 4 with the decimal at the end, move it twice to the left to convert it, to convert from a percent to decimal. And then there's our T of 8. You could put that in the calculator. 7,000 times 0.04. I use parentheses. You can also use the times button underneath divide. Times 8. And we get $2,240 in interest. And for part B, what will the total value be after 8 years? I'll put part B right here. It's the principal investment of 7,000 plus the interest for $9,240. Turn the page. Number 11. So it just kind of repeats the question below, but we're just filling in this answer blank right here. Find the missing value. Round your answer to the nearest year. So again, it tells you which formula we're using. We are using the simple interest. And it gives us the simple interest. We're not solving for I. We are given the value for I. We are told that this is the principal, our P, 200,000. We are given our rate, but we are given the rate as a percent. As a decimal, we move the decimal back to the left twice. That is 0.058. And the one value that we do not have, which we are solving for, is T. So this is our equation. We need to solve for T. There's a couple ways to do this, but we can clean up the right side of the equation. 200,000 times 0.058 is 11,600. Times T. So to get T by itself, we can just divide both sides by 11,600. So 104,400 divided by 11,600 gives us 9. So T equals 9. So the other way we could have done this is take 104,400 and just divide by each of these pieces individually. Divide by 200,000, hit enter, hit divide by 0.058 and hit enter, and you would get the same thing. Number 12. Now we are solving for the rate. This is a good question. We are given the time as 30 months. If you say that t equals 30, you will get this problem wrong. Because as I said, time is t, well, t is time in years. So if we are given that time is 30 months, that is 30 divided by 12. You could be given it in weeks. If it said 30 weeks, you would put 30 over 52. But we need to know time in years. Our principal is 900. And our simple interest, I, is 65. So 30 divided by 12. I mean, I guess you could also think about it as t is 2.5 years. Either one of these will get you there. So I equals P times R times T. I is 65. The P is 900. We do not know what R is, but T is 2.5. Again, a couple ways you could attack this problem. You can multiply 900 and 2.5, or like I said, we can divide these both out one at a time. Divide the right side by 900, so I divide the left side by 900. And I get that. So if you're using the calculator, you don't need to retype this. Because I want to divide out this 2.5, just hit divide 2.5. Your calculator will divide the previous answer. That's that ANS. And I get 0.028 repeating, ending in 9 because it's rounding that last spot up. It said to the nearest tenth of a percent. So let's think about this. To the nearest tenth of a percent. So we have the decimal. We need our answer as a percent. So I move the decimal 2 spots to the right. And now we have 2.88 repeating. We want it to the tenths location. That 8 is going to move that up into 2.9%. In case that was confusing, again from here, the other thing we could have done is multiply 900 times 2.5, which is 2250. Still being multiplied by R, and now we could divide out that 2250. But in my face-to-face class, there was some confusion on getting from this to 2.9%. So again, 65 divided by 2250 is this right here. 0.028 8 repeating. We need to convert that to a decimal, or that is a decimal, convert it to a percent by moving the decimal. And that's all of these 8s. It's going to round that up to 2.9%. Long video. This is our last one for part 1, and then I'll do part 2 right after this. Question 13. In order to pay for college, the parents of a child invest $25,000 in a bond that pays 10% interest, compounded semi-annually. Compounded. So again, it tells you which formula that you are using. In this case, it's compound interest. A equals P times 1 plus R over N to the power of N times T. Alex sometimes uses M instead of N. It's the same thing. How much money will be there in 18 years? Round your answer to the nearest cent. So semi-annually, that is the number of times we are compounding per year. Semi-annually, like a semi-annual sale, occurs twice a year. So N or M equals 2. 25,000, that is our P. I'll label these in pink. 10%, that is our R. But of course, we need that as a decimal. Move it back to the left. So 0.1. And how much money will be in there in 18 years? So T in years is 18. So again, I have a TI-83. If you have an 84, yours will be a little bit neater than what I'm going to have to do here. But to fill in the formula, our principal, 25,000, times, in parentheses, 1 plus our rate, is 0.1 or 0.10, over N, which is 2, raised to the power of, I'm going to have to cram this in, but N times T. So 18 times 2. So try to get this all in the screen. 25,000 times 1 plus, I'm going to put this fraction in parentheses. If you have an 84, I don't think you have to do that. But 0.1 divided by 2. And again, if I open a parenthesis, I need to close the parenthesis. So I need to close this one that's open. If I see 2 open parentheses, I should see 2 close parentheses. Raised to the power. To raise to any power, we use this arrow button right there. And so we are raising to the power of 18 times 2, and I'm going to put that in parentheses. In an 84, you don't have to do that. And there we have it. When we're talking about money, we round to the second decimal, the cent. So this is 144,795.40. And I'll stop this here. And I'll do the rest of the review in video 2.